Good evening and welcome to tonight's subcommittee on curriculum instruction. My microphone is off. Let's try this again. Here we go.
I'm so excited. Good evening and welcome to tonight's curriculum.
This meeting is being recorded.
Curriculum instruction and student life subcommittee meeting of the Beverly School Committee in accordance with the Governor's March 12th, 2020 order. We're going to be suspending certain provisions of open meeting law, and that is why tonight we are meeting in a hybrid model. This evening, BevCam will be recording this subcommittee meeting as a public service. In addition, as you just heard, that our school committee president, Rachel Abel, is also recording this meeting for our own records. My name is John Mulady. I will be filling in as the chair of the subcommittee meeting, and we are going to do a brief introductions and attendance. Ms. Abel, would you mind?
Sure. In person tonight, we have myself, Rachel Abel, and Mr. John Mulady from the school committee. For our curriculum instruction and student life reps, we have Dr. Dorothy Flaherty in person. Also remotely, we are joined by Mr. Greg Twombly, Ms. Karen Goodnow-McGuire, Ms. Joanne Hildreth, and Ms. Lorgan Sudak. We have our recording secretary here in person, Jenna Chevali. And we are pleased to be joined by student members virtually this evening. We have Ava Mack, we have Billy Adams, and we have Virginia Betts. We are also joined this evening by Dr. Suzanne Chirocek, our superintendent, and Principal Megan Hart. And I'll be looking for additional joins on our Zoom meeting. So thank you, Mr. Mulady.
Thank you very much. So tonight for our first agenda item, we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance, and I will lead the pledge if you don't mind. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next on our agenda, we call for the approval of the minutes from our October 7th, 2020 meeting. May I have a motion to accept those minutes, please?
I will make that motion for the October 7th minutes.
Motion made by Ms. Abel. Thank you very much. Is there a second? I will second it.
Thank you.
Any discussion on the motion? Okay, all those in favor of approving the minutes? Thank you. And next, I would like to turn it over to Dr. Flaherty.
Thank you. Two spotlight projects I'd like to highlight with our middle school. We have two projects, middle school project and the Ayers Elementary School, that we'd like to focus on tonight as our spotlight schools. And I would like to turn the middle school art project over to one of our members and also an assistant principal here at the middle school, Mr. Twombly, to talk about the art project.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Yeah, one of our goals going into the year was to try to find unique ways to build student culture and make it a school more welcome for everyone coming in, especially during these difficult times. So this kind of came up organically. I was speaking with the art department, and they were telling me how they had a photography project. And I said, well, what a great idea. Why don't we have the kids do a competition, and we can get those printed out and post them up inside the school. And so the art department with Alina Zalaki and James Fox, they really headed this, they spearheaded it. And the kids did all of the photography remotely. So it's another kind of great example of thinking creatively about how we can support kids from afar, but also deliver instruction. And they came up with some wonderful, wonderful pieces of art and photos. And we were very grateful that we were able to print them out and put them on the cafeterias. So now when the kids come in for their hybrid days, they see some of their artwork. So the project was mainly focused on angles and lighting. The categories of photos they had to submit for their project were portrait, landscape, abstract, and also still life. And the winners were selected by the students themselves in the class on a blind vote. And this is, I actually found out, this is cohort B. So not all the winners are shown here. And if you get a chance to come into the cafeterias, the third floor cafeteria and the first floor cafeteria in the middle school, they're unbelievable. They're fantastic. They look, professional. So some of these kiddos really have a future if they want to pursue it. So left to right, we have Eve Sexton, Lydia Tierney, Caden Wallow, Morgan Linsky, and Nina Orlando. And on the bottom, we have Gracelyn Skilling, Libby Ulrich, Vera June Sherrill, Charlotte Miller, and Chloe McQuaid. And then not pictured is Sophie Calendari and Savannah Hathaway. So this is just a great example of kind of our teachers thinking out of the box, a way to build culture in the school, make the school feel more comfortable, for the kids during this difficult time. So hopefully we have some more great things to come. And some of these pictures, if you see on the screen, they are absolutely fantastic. Unbelievable.
I wanted to link you to the folder so you could see some of the pictures that weren't included with the winners. And some of them are there are two pieces, and I can show you right here, number 10 and number 11. They look like they go together. I mean, you would buy this in a studio somewhere. And in fact, I asked the principal if I could commission copies of both of those to hang in my office. So the work was just so beautiful. And I'm so pleased that they're going to be hanging in the school on display for everybody to see. Thank you, Mr. Tromley.
You're welcome.
And now I'd like to introduce one of our new principals, Miss Megan Hart, who's been rocking it as almost like an experienced veteran through these very difficult times. And we're very excited to welcome her here tonight to be able to showcase Ayers Elementary School for you.
All right, thank you so much. I am very, very excited to have the opportunity to highlight Ayers School tonight, and so proud to be here representing all of the awesome work that's been going on in our school community. So this quote, I wanted to include it. This is actually a quote that I have shared with our parent community at the forums at the beginning of the year and also with staff. And I feel like it's really representative of the mindset of our staff, and we're kind of keeping this at the forefront of all our interactions with parents, with families, with students during this unusual time. And our goal has been from the very beginning to create an environment that is safe and that is joyful and where students are excited to come to school and learn. So when I was told that there were some areas that we could highlight and focus on, it was really hard to narrow it down to just a few. And so I tried to pick a few things that I thought represented a wide array of our whole school community. I wanted to kind of dig in and do some thank yous for our Ayers community first. We're going to look at how we have been spending a lot of time integrating arts into our instruction, how we are using our outdoor learning spaces, and lastly, how we're building some awareness of different cultures and celebrating those in our buildings. So this is a picture from one of our kindergarten students the first week of school, and I just love it because you can see that he had used symbols, his drawing, to show us how much he was loving school. And I really just wanted to start by saying that we couldn't be more grateful for everyone in our community. Our parents have been kind and flexible and understanding. Our students jump out of the cars in the morning to come into the building. They're eager to learn. And our staff have continued to just amaze me by raising the bar over and over again with their dedication and positivity. So one of the things I really wanted to highlight was just kind of the atmosphere that I feel like we have started to lay the foundation with this year. And through that, and I think on the next slide, you can see some of the examples of ways that is portrayed in our classrooms. We have really been striving to come up with new ways to engage our students. Some of the pictures you can see here in the middle, we've had room transformations to go along with novels that we're studying. We've been trying to encourage creative collaboration for students in classrooms that are designed for spacing. We've really started to embrace the outdoors and natural elements in our learning spaces to provide meaningful experiences for our students. and we have found new ways. We are tied to the third grade RLA classrooms in the district. So we found new ways to take some tried and true things that we've done in person and bring them to our RLA students as well, such as outdoor fruit tasting. We've had some outdoor gatherings with them as well, and they are working very closely with our in-person third grades. Oh yeah, and there's a little video of our first grade pumpkin patch down the hallway. So the next thing I wanted to kind of share a little bit about was how we have worked really hard to integrate arts into the content areas. As you know, at the elementary level right now, all of our specialists are providing asynchronous lessons in the afternoon. That's the remote portion of the day for our students. But our specialists are in the building all morning, and they're there all day with us. So they've really become an invaluable resource to how we can connect things that we're teaching for content with the arts. And I have a couple examples of that I wanted to show. The first one is a third grade activity, and this was our art teacher working with our third grade teachers, and the art teacher came in, Ms. Shields, and did a wonderful lesson on the artist Mondrian, and showed how the art that Mondrian creates can connect to multiplication and arrays that the students have been learning about. And so they did a really neat interactive lesson where they had dice on the board. However the dice rolled, they created an array. They showed it in two different ways, and then used that to create artwork that mimicked the art of Mondrian. So that was one way that we have incorporated that. This is another example. We have a classroom reading Charlotte's Web right now, and again, tying in with art. The kids did some work with Ms. Shields, learning about how spiders are natural artists and how they create their webs. And the main focus for standards in this unit is on character traits. So the kids created their own web, much like Charlotte in the novel, with a character trait that represented something about themselves. So music and movement in the classroom has been a real key focus for us, with our classes looking very different than they typically do with spacing. We have found that we needed to find ways to include music and movement into the kiddos' day. So this is one example where the kids were working on focusing on rhythm and following a beat and keeping with the teacher. So I'll let you look at this video with pool noodles, actually. Hall, the joy and excitement when it's their turn with the pool noodles. So that's one example. Another example of ways that we have included movement. This is one of our third grade students. Our music and PE teachers have a green screen in the room, and we've been trying to find ways to build in content and also movement. And so in this particular example, they're using a word from Charlotte's Web, the vocabulary word, and this kiddo got to be the movement leader. And so whenever they're studying the vocabulary, they take turns pulling up the word. And the kids love seeing themselves as the leader on the screen. We've also done this with math facts. We've done it with sight words. And so this is just one of the examples for that. And last, we've really been trying to tie movement in with SEL. So we've been doing a lot of team building activities where the kiddos can keep their space, where they're outside, and where they are continuing to build bonds and learn more about each other. So this was a video from that, one of those examples. We're doing relay races with hula. So our specialists have really been an invaluable resource to us, and we're really excited about collaborating with them in different ways than we ever have before. Outdoor learning has been another focus for us at AIRS this year. I would be remiss if I didn't start with a huge thank you to Mayor Tree, who donated all of the logs for our outdoor learning spaces, more than 100 of them actually. And we have 9 outdoor learning spaces at AIRS, so each grade level has at least one designated space for them. They are free to use that space whenever they want throughout the day. We're also working with Victoria Hackett, the entire district is actually, about designing outdoor learning spaces, and she's the founder of Outdoor Classrooms. So we're continuing to look at ways, even as the weather gets colder, that we can be really creative about using our outdoor spaces. That's a picture of the fruit tasting up there. Our teachers have been really creative about doing scavenger hunts, using sight words when they go outside, all kinds of different ideas. These are just some more pictures of them. We do a lot of read alouds out there. We've been using the stumps sometimes not as seating, but as desks when they're working on different kinds of work. So that's been really exciting for us. And lastly, on Fridays, we have been doing a virtual whole school meeting, and typically at the elementary level, we would do a whole school meeting in the gym, but obviously it's a little bit different this year. So we've been working on building community on Friday during our whole school meetings, and on Fridays we talk about how our theme for the year is this year's an adventure, and we're trying to embrace what's different and make it exciting. And so we always say we're on a quest to be our best, and we've talked about what a quest means. We're on a mission, we're on a journey. We're always trying to work our hardest. And so one of the ways that we are trying to include and build some cultural competency during this whole school meeting is by focusing on days that are important, cultural celebrations, and engaging students in the sharing of that. So we have a couple students actually lined up in November to share some significant events that relate to their culture. And we're going to continue to do this throughout the year and build on that with strengths and successes from cultures that are different from our own to continue to learn and grow as a whole school. So we're really excited. And thank you so much for letting me highlight all of this.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Ms. Hart? I think you can see we haven't been in school very long, but it's a very active and very exciting learning community over at Ayers Elementary School this year. And thank you for your leadership and for all the hard work that your teachers and kiddos have been doing.
Thank you.
I'm not seeing anyone come off mute on our Zoom for our hybrid participants, but you can use the convention of shaking your hand in front of your camera if you want me to let Mr. Mulady know if there's questions. Still not seeing any questions. Thanks.
Okay, now back to you, Dr. Flaherty, about our first professional development day.
I believe before I get into that, we do have several of our student reps with us this evening, and we'd like to give them, that's okay. We'd like to give them an opportunity if they'd like to share with us something that they want us to know or something that's been going on in their school that they're excited to share. So I'm just going to call on each of them, and you can say pass if you don't have anything to share this evening, or we'd love to hear your thoughts if you have comments about what you've seen already. So I'll start with Ava.
Hi, everyone. So I just wanted to say, sitting and looking at so many different ways that everyone's developing and going through this hard time, and I think everyone's doing a really good job. And as a student's perspective, I think it's a really cool experience to go through, and it's a really good milestone that I think I'm going to remember for a long time. And I think our teachers are doing a great job. And thank you for all of my teachers for doing a really good job this year.
Thank you for that positive thinking and positive perspective, Ava. Billy.
Yeah, I'm just glad that everyone is trying to make it work, like with all the extracurriculars, after school activities. Everyone's just doing what they can to make it as normal as possible, because I think they understand that, you know, students need those activities to keep them going. And that's important to understand for the teachers. So I'm just glad that they're doing that.
Thank you. And Virginia.
Hi, I loved that presentation. I remember being at Ayers, and elementary school is such a fun time. It's good to see that those kids are still having those same opportunities. Yeah, and at the high school, we had our senior class picture on the hill, so that was fun. We got to do that socially distant, and so the photographer is going to Photoshop all the 3 cohorts. So that'll be a fun way to keep that tradition alive.
Oh, that's so great. You get to do the tradition, and also that it's socially distanced, so you'll always have a visual depiction of what you went through to show your children and grandchildren someday. Are there any other? I think that was the three that we had right now.
Evan Wong did join.
Oh, he did, okay.
Yeah.
And Evan did join us, so would you like to share anything, Evan?
One great thing that teachers are doing these days is they make a big slideshow and have everyone share something about themselves on it. And I think that's really great for the teachers to let kids share themselves and get out there.
Thank you for sharing that. So now I will move on. Yesterday, as you know, was election day, and so the students did not have school, but our teachers became the students yesterday. And we had a very successful professional development day. And what I'd like to do is highlight for you our agenda so you can see all of the various topics that teachers had to choose from. And then we do have some early survey results. It's not complete, but we do have some polls to show you. And so if I could just show you how we kind of organize the day. The top part shows you all the different categories, and you can see that they line up with our goal areas for the district. And so both the agenda and our choice board were color-coded so that teachers would know which workshops would fall into which goal area if they were pursuing it. And so our day started with a wonderful presentation by our newest member of the Beverly Public Schools team, Dr. Andre Morgan, the Director of Opportunity, Access, and Equity. And he ran an all-staff training on anti-racism and began our work and our conversations that then flowed over into individual debrief sessions at the school buildings because everybody was virtual. But we found a way to try to link that learning together, and each school filled out a Google form, and those, some of the questions from there asked for certain adjectives and words, and we'll be turning the two questions that the staffs discussed, one being around what we're already doing to increase a sense of belonging for that is representative of all of the members within their school community. And then the second is around internal racism and how structural racism can be displayed, or we should be looking at learning together. And those will both be turned into word walls that will be shared back out with everybody, and it'll be from a district perspective so we can see where some of the work is that we need to focus on moving forward. Then we did break the day up into kind of different grade spans. And our paraprofessionals had a very powerful training that was very well received on creating trauma-sensitive classrooms by Jessica Tipro. And I was able to go in for a few minutes to that session, and she was very engaging. Our staff across the board were so engaged and participating through chat boards and questions. And it was very exciting to see the level of participation across the board. Our preschool, they had a training run by Mrs. Montevecchi, our principal over at Hannah, around morning meeting and responsive classroom. And then they were able to spend some time after that training working through the choice boards, which I'll show you in a few moments. Our elementary level, as you know, we started a new math program this year called Zern, and we were able to have 3 separate trainings that allowed for grade spans to be able to get some direct question and answers now that they've had a few weeks to be implementing it. And so our kindergarten were together, our grade 1 and 2 teachers were together, and then our grade 3 and 4 teachers were together. And then when they weren't in a training session for the math, they were able to work on the choice board. Our middle school and high school had a powerful training from Dr. Stuart Ablon from Think Kids out of Mass General Hospital, and that was on collaborative problem solving. And we have a lot of requests for follow-up work with him, and that was a very powerful session. When that was finished, the high school had several departments that had department work to do. One, I believe the math was around iPad training on how to use the iPads, which was requested by the teachers while they're doing their hybrid and remote teaching. And then the history department, as you know, is implementing a new curriculum this year, and so they had some work they needed to do together as well. The nurses came to the all-staff training, and then they had a SNAP training for all of the nurses. And then when they were done with the synchronous the in-person trainings, then they were able to go work through their choice boards. Choice board we started back in September, and again, you can see the color coding and that the chart was color coded so teachers would know what goal area each workshop fell into. And you'll see that we kept some of the popular sessions from the fall, especially around some of the technology pieces like Pear Deck and Ed Puzzle, Google Classroom, and you'll see wherever we added in a new session that it was highlighted in yellow with new next to it. And these were asynchronous, and these workshops will be left open so that teachers that may want to go in and view or watch the workshop but couldn't get to it yesterday, this will be left up for the rest of the school year, and we will build on it for our March days as well. And so you can see we had very wide choice for them. One of the pieces of feedback we got after September were that all of our trainings and workshops were for our instructional staff. And so what we added into the choice board was a block where our non-instructional professional staff, such as our counselors, could either work together or they could go off and have time to do some reading or exploration in their field that they don't necessarily have the time to do when they're with students because their days are so busy. And then we also had a synchronous sessions, again, color-coded. You can see that we picked up and did a deeper dive into some of the sessions that were asynchronous or offered in the fall so that teachers were now ready for deeper learning in Seesaw and in Pear Deck, boom cards. So these were all synchronous sessions that they could sign into. And two of our most popular ones were follow-up from the morning. Dr. Morgan ran a session on understanding microaggressions and everyday bias. And Mrs. Montevecchi ran a live synchronous session for a follow-up discussion on a movie that they could watch asynchronously called Navigating White Privilege and Anti-Racism Classroom Session. And both of those sessions capped out. They were only allowed to have 100 people in the link, and Dr. Chorochik and I couldn't even get into either one of them because they were completely filled. And so that is an overview of the offerings that we had. Oops. And so you'll see up here, this was from last night, so we had 442 responses to our exit ticket. Not a complete number yet. We had more come in today, but it was still a very large percentage of responses already. And nearly 82% of those that had responded by last evening had rated the PD offerings as meeting their learning needs for the day. And so that was based on ranking it as either a 4 or a 5. And even higher than that, 85.7% of the respondents had either strongly agreed or agreed that they had learned a new skill or resource that they would be able to implement in their position during the school year. Any questions on professional development?
I'm looking for hands on our remote participants. I don't think I see any right now. Okay.
Move on. Okay. All right. So one thing that we did want to bring to you and to let you know, we had originally had this as an asterisk that we would need an action on it. We don't actually need an action because the superintendent, it is in with the scope of the superintendent does to call for a snow day. But we did want to make everybody aware of it, and we'll be sending a communication out to families very shortly. We're just waiting to hear some final input from our Y and after-school programs as to what would happen if school was canceled. But there is a major change that the commissioner is allowing superintendents to have for the upcoming school year. And that is that for this year only, he has permitted superintendents to call remote learning days on a snow day, as long as there isn't a major power outage. So as long as students can participate in remote learning, then the superintendent can call for a remote learning day, and that way we do not need to make that day up at the end of the year. If a majority of the town is out and may not participate in remote learning because of power outages in Beverly, that would then need to be a school cancellation day or a no school day, and that would be a day that would need to be made up in June. One of the other highlights that we wanted to make sure that we made public was that because all of our schools are operating on a shortened day this year as our hybrid, we think it's very valuable, especially at the elementary level, that students are in all 5 days, but we do have the shortened day, that delayed openings will not be called because it would be impossible to get them in, and we'd be almost having to send the group out as soon as they came in if we were operating on a delayed schedule. And then you can see that we will still post all of this information, whether it's a remote learning day or a school cancellation, on our website, through television on WBZ channel 4, 5, 7, 56, and Fox 25, as well as on the radio stations WBZ, WBOQ, and WRKO. And the superintendent is here this evening if you have any questions for her on this.
Mr. Milady, I'm looking on the screen. I don't think I see any hands raised. Nobody's coming off mute either.
We're all keeping our fingers crossed.
Yes, yes. All right, if no questions, then I can move into our key focus topic. You'll see the last item on the agenda, we had discussed at our last meeting a little bit when I had started to do a draft calendar for the year. And so one of the ways that I wanted to set this up was to have a spotlight school for each meeting, and then to also break our topics up into 1 or 2 key focus areas for each meeting. And that was based on information that I received from committee members. So one of the first topics that did come in was to have an overview of our evaluation system. And so I thought that it would be appropriate to start with that in November, as this is the area that we're all working in currently. So from this first picture, you can see this is a copy of the state's 5-step evaluation system, which is what we follow. And it starts with teachers and administrators doing a self-assessment, and based on the information from that self-assessment, the educator will develop their goals with their supervisor of what they would like to accomplish for the year. And they have 2 goals. One is called a student learning goal, and that is targeted to achievement and student learning within the classroom. And then the second goal is a professional learning goal, which is an area that they identify for themselves as an area where they would like to do more learning in. They then write the goal and implement a plan. And through collection of evidence and observation, the principal or supervisor will give the person a formative assessment in the mid-cycle and a summative evaluation at the end of the cycle. For teachers that are in their first 3 years within the district, or as first 3 years teaching period, they would receive a 1-year evaluation. And once a teacher reaches professional status and is in good standing, there's no concerns, they would be in a 2-year cycle. And if that's the case, on a 1-year cycle, the formative assessment is done in the end of January, and then May for the summative. And for somebody that's in a 2-year cycle, the formative is done at the end of year 1, and the summative is done at the end of year 2. However, there are some changes just for this year, and we have already held a training with all of our principals and supervisors to go through this information, and they right now are actively involved in meeting with educators in their buildings to develop goals. And the main reason, obviously, for the last 8 or 9 months now, we've been dealing with the impact of the pandemic, as well as the acknowledgement that we have a lot of work to do on systemic racism that was brought to the forefront through the Black Lives Matter movement last spring and summer. I kept this quote in, and what I did was I went through the training that we did with the administrators, which was more extensive than what you're seeing tonight, but I wanted to give you a good overview without killing you with all of the details that the evaluators need to have. But this one quote I think was really important to leave in because it really underscores our philosophy in Beverly around evaluation. And we don't want it to be something that is based in judgment or a gut you or something that is done to an educator. But it really is seen as a way to have a coaching session or a facilitation where you can talk about teaching and learning and work together in a partnership on finding out ways to explore opportunities to improve, because even when we are really good at what we do, we want to always keep striving to get better. So one of the nice pieces in realizing that schools would be facing a lot this year is that the state actually did come up with a system that really is streamlined and simplified and is trying to be both responsive and supportive to teachers and to the evaluators that will be helping and working with them. And so they've really whittled everything down into 2 main priorities, and they're looking for coherence, which means that goals are aligned to a streamlined set of focus indicators, and collaboration, because the work that we need to do really cannot happen in a vacuum as we're trying to operate in hybrids, in-person, remote, and to ensure that all students have the same opportunities and exposure to learning. So collaboration is a key facet of all of the work that we do this year. And so what is required? The bottom line is that the state is still making it mandatory that evaluation take place. So it will be in place for the school year. It is subject to collective bargaining, which is part of, it is in our current contract. And for the work that we need to do and really learn what has to happen for the 2020-2021 school year, the state did supply a wealth of resources that can be used to help streamline the work that you need to do together. So as you heard me mention, I talked about focus indicators. In the regular system, there are 4 strands, and the rubric goes on 4 pages for each of these. What they did was they tried to streamline the standards that need to be looked at and goal areas should be aligned to. And you'll see from this visual depiction that they are focusing on 6 standards for administrators and 6 standards for teachers. And if you read across, you'll see that they tried to align them to be working in the same goal areas. So for teachers, their focus indicators include curriculum and planning, where the administrator is in curriculum. For the teacher, it's the learning environment, which connects with instruction. For teachers, cultural proficiency. And for administrators, it's the environment of the school. The one area where there is a little difference is in the next indicator, where teachers are working on family collaboration, and we do need to have our administrators focus on the management and human resource piece of their work as well. But then they move into communication, teachers' reflection, and then you'll see that cultural proficiency is a major indicator for administrators as well. It's just housed under a different strand than it was for teachers. And then the last strand for teachers is professional collaboration, which links into that second priority that we saw on a previous screen. This should look familiar to you, and we wanted to make sure that we underscored this for our administrators, in especially with new people that we have in district this year, so that it really shows the flow as to how goals are developed. And we have our 4 district goals in our improvement plan. and that is how the superintendent's goals are established. And then mine and the principal's and director's goals should flow from the superintendent's goals, and then the teacher's goals should flow from the school and the principal's goals. We took each of the goal areas and we took the indicators, and this is just for the teachers. We took the teacher indicators and we incorporated where they would fall into each of our 3 goal areas, the 4th goal area being school management, and that would fall under the administrator's goal. So for an example, our first district goal is engaged learning, and you can see the 4 indicators there that would support engaged learning. Rigorous and consistent curriculum. There are also 4 areas in those focus indicators that would fall and support goal 2. And then our 3rd goal was innovative practices, and there are 3 goal areas that would fall and support our innovative practices, and that's the goal area that includes SEL and UDL and project-based learning. For each of those 6 indicators that you saw, the state did put out a 1-page kind of overview that helps both the evaluator and the teacher and will really focus and make the work easier to accomplish. And each of those pages starts with the standard or the indicator with a description of that indicator on the top. The second row, the 2 blue boxes, you can see they list key practices that are adapted and that should be incorporated into that goal area. Then there is a list of specific practices and providing them in a context of things that you can incorporate into your classroom and into your professional learning in order to achieve that goal. And then they also provided a list of supporting resources that the teacher or the administrator can access in support of their work. So this may look familiar to you. Anybody that's been involved in schools, you've heard about this for a long time when we talk about evaluation and we talk about SMART goals. Well, one big change this year is that they've extended that to include SMARTY goals. And what that means is that our original SMART goal meant that your goal was specific and strategic, it was measurable, it was action-oriented, it was rigorous, realistic, and results-focused, and it had a time limit or a time and space on as to when it would be accomplished. The 2 new pieces that they've incorporated is that your goals should be show inclusivity and be equitable, so that we're focusing on those 2 last pieces to change our SMART goal into a SMARTY. And they provided examples of how to write a SMARTY goal as well. This is just to show you some of the resources that the state, in the middle of all of the other work that was going on, has put out in order to help support educators in doing their self-assessment, in writing their goals, in teaching or reviewing, because part of what a school needs to do each year is to provide an updated training for educators around the evaluation system. It gives an example of writing in a protocol that you can follow through step by step on writing your SMARTY goals. And they also provided sample student and staff feedback surveys, which I know 2 of our principals have already implemented with their staffs. And the surveys are adapted to focus specifically on the focus indicators that are being used for this coming year. So when we start to look at evaluation, we need to talk about collecting of evidence around teaching and learning, and so that you can demonstrate if you've achieved your goal or if you're on the way to achieving it. And the suggestions that they give is to make sure that you identify authentic, targeted set of evidence. It does not need to be expansive, and so if you agree in your conversations up front, then everybody knows exactly what type of evidence you should be showing in order to achieve your goal. It should look beyond just observations. It should look at student work and learning or courses or workshops that teachers have taken and how they've then implemented it into lesson plans or into a course classroom. and we need to look at, are we working to mitigate bias in the resources that we're using, the work that we're presenting, and to slowly work to reduce that bias that may be present currently. Observation and feedback should prioritize relationship building and communication. With what we know the mental health impacts have been with the loss of school last year, the hybrid situation, the loss of being able to be with friends, that building relationships and communication with home is our very top priority, as it is for the state, telling us what our priorities should be. We need to keep the educator voice at the center and make sure that they're part of the planning and the conversations. And it needs to adapt to the learning setting. As you know, we're in multiple types of learning settings this year, and they've adapted the rubric in order to look at each of these goal areas to reflect that. So they're giving us some guidance as to what to look for if you're evaluating and that the educator is in a synchronous remote setting, an asynchronous remote setting, or in person. This is just to show you that the importance that the state is putting on collecting of feedback, and that we should be reaching out to assess feedback from families and caregivers. It should include and collect feedback from students and staff on an ongoing basis in both formal and informal ways. And it should, again, be specific to the learning setting that the student is participating in. And I mentioned this earlier, but this is just a slide to show you that they have developed sample surveys so that you don't have to recreate the work on the local level, and that they have linked these surveys directly back to those 6 indicators that we talked about at the beginning of the presentation. And this was one thing that had come in as a request, and so I just wanted to show you that we do have a very specific calendar that we follow for evaluation. It is negotiated and part of the contract. And you'll see that there are some highlighted areas right here. And that is because school started 2 weeks later. Our system is off by a couple of weeks, so we did pick new dates. But by January, we are caught up and back onto the original schedule that we normally use. Any questions?
I don't see any hands from our remote participants. I think that was really helpful. I know that this is probably my 5th year, and it's always been a mystery to me. I haven't been on this subcommittee, so thank you so much for laying that out and explaining how it's looking different this year.
Thank you. And our last topic is to take a look at that year-long agenda. This was in the packets that were sent out to you. It's as a draft. And so what I tried to do, again, was to take the feedback that I had received, break it down into what could be manageable or group kind of like things together. And this is the draft that I submit to the committee for your approval or feedback to change. And I'll just quickly go through. We're in November right now, so EARS in the middle school were highlighted, and it's an evaluation overview. I'm proposing that for December. Our spotlight school will be Centerville, and hopefully we can get some holiday music selection to start off our meeting. And then the focus topic will be around equity, and so we'll include an overview of our Title IX policy, which we do need to take a look at and eventually adopt at the school committee level. We'll take a look at attendance update. We will have finished our first trimester and at the elementary and the middle school, and we will have finished the first quarter at the high school. And so we can give you a look at what our attendance is looking like at all of those levels. We'll have an overview of inclusion. We had a question about how our push-in, as you know, we are moving to a more inclusive model, which tries to keep students in the classroom as much as possible and to bring services into support them in the room rather than the traditional model of pulling students out and providing those services separately. And then also looking at some of the fall benchmark assessment data that we had that will gave us, a lot of the schools are starting their data meetings this week and next week. And that was targeted at looking at the learning loss that may have happened and looking at benchmark assessments and seeing where students are this year as to where they typically would be. One of the decisions that we made was that our fall benchmark we gave this year was a repeat of the spring benchmark so that we could compare data this fall to where students ended the school year with to see if there was any additional learning loss as a result of the closure. And then for January, our spotlight school would be Cove, and our focus topic would be around student mental health and SEL at each of our 3 levels. In February, our spotlight school would be Hannah, and at the high school, our After Dark program. And we would focus on athletics, fine arts, and performing arts, as well as our program of studies, review, and approval, because as you know, that comes to this committee each year, and the high school starts their course selection in March, so we need to have that done. In March, North Beverly would be the spotlight school, and our focus topics would be around looking at the new curriculum that was implemented this year, Zern Math at the elementary level, primary source for social studies in 8th grade, and the TCI program for the high school. And then we could also bring any review or requests that we may have for proposed curriculum changes for next year. In April, the spotlight school would be Beverly Middle School. Our focus topic would be our district improvement plan. This is when our principals would come and give you an update and a presentation, and also propose any new goals that they would like to bring forward for their district, as well as giving you an update on our equity work. In May, the high school would be our spotlight school, and this would be the meeting where we would focus on handbook reviews, school improvement plan updates, and then we could review discipline at the middle school and the high school, knowing that this is not a typical year, and that would be something we probably want to compare in a regular year as well next year, but we can look at discipline as far as incidences, demographics, alternatives, and we had several requests to explain the role of our SROs within the schools. And at that point, we can also give you an overview of any summer PD programs that will be offered, saving June to be a celebration of learning and all that was accomplished in this very unique adventure. Is that what we're calling it, Ms. Hart? And that's what I would submit to you as a proposed schedule for the year.
Mr. Milady, I have one question.
Sure.
TCI, does that stand for something?
It does, but I can't, it's the name of the program, and I don't know it off the top of my head.
What area?
It's
generally?
social studies.
Social studies, okay, thank you. I'm looking at our remote participants. I don't see anyone coming off mute or raising their hand. I don't think there's questions.
Well, I think on behalf of the whole school committee, thank you so much, Dr. Flaherty. I mean, we're very blessed to have you as part of our team, and tonight's just a good reminder, but for the public to see some of the work that you throw in for us. And I was thinking about, we're doing the presentation on evaluations. It's just a reminder to everybody about the daunting task that we're facing in education, combating different societal issues, as well as academic and social issues. But, you know, I like the confidence and like the enthusiasm that we saw. And it's just it's good to know that we have a good team right here as we move forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you. We're lucky. We do have a great team.
So that seems to be it. Our next meeting is December 2nd. And for those of you who serve in the committee and the massive audience we're having, I hope you all have a happy Thanksgiving.
And hopefully we know who the president is by then.
And the budget gets put down too at the state level. So I guess without any further ado, thank you very much. Be well, and meeting adjourned. Take care.
Need a motion.
Oh, I got a motion. I choked. Oh. Almost. Alex is going to edit that out so I look better. Thank you. Make a motion to adjourn. We have a motion from Ms. Abel.
Second.
We have a second, thankfully. All right.
Favor?
All in favor? Motion passes.
Looks unanimous.
Unanimous, okay. All right, I'll do better next time, guys. Goodbye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.